At 8,848 meters, Everest is the highest mountain in the world. Ang Ferber was born here in the shadow of Everest. This is his backyard. Ang Ferber first climbed Everest when he was 25. Few people know these mountains better. Jane Rogers is preparing for the trip of a lifetime.
It's somewhere I've always wanted to go, and obviously Everest is a particularly famous mountain. It's going to be nice to say I've been there. And you're actually entering into a sort of a whole culture of people, and they live there the whole time, and they're used to seeing these tourists coming around and sort of going up to see their mountain, which they sort of wake up every morning and see.
At home in Nepal, Ang Ferber, who works as a trekking guide, is waiting for the first group of the season.
My lovely wife, very good. She loved me very much too.
Like most Sherpas, Ang Ferber knows that he has to earn enough in the short trekking season to support his wife and family for a whole year. Ang Ferber was born in 1953, the very year when Tenzing Norgay and Edmund Hillary became the first people to climb Everest. The expedition was led by John Hunt, then an army colonel.
Throughout the time we were going up the Khumbu Valley, there was nobody, absolutely nobody but ourselves. It was perfect, it was untouched, it was unspoiled. Me and my chums bear a very heavy responsibility for everything that followed. The interest we created, putting it mildly, a sense of wonder and amazement, sparked off a global urge to travel in that part of the world.
That surge of interest has meant that for nearly 50 years people have been coming to this remote country sandwiched between China and India. It's one of the poorest countries in the world. Tourism is now Nepal's biggest cash-generating industry. Jane is one of 100,000 trekkers who will visit Nepal this year, a number which has nearly doubled in the last 10 years.
We're lucky we've had lovely sunshine and we had great views coming in, and to look at the mountains, it's so unreal to finally be here, having thought about it for so long.
Jane's starting point for her trek is Lukla, high in the region of Nepal known as the Khumbu. Jane's guide is Ang Ferber. He's seen plenty of changes in the region since his childhood.
When I was small, there was not much development in Nepal or in the area. Then the tourists started to come, and they just kept coming.
The trek will take Jane from Lukla up into the Sagarmatha National Park and on to the Sherpa capital of Namche Bazaar. From there, it's another 7 days hike to their destination above Everest Base Camp at 5,500 meters. There is only one trail up the Khumbu Valley. For each of the thousands of trekkers, there are 2 or 3 extra porters, guides and cooks crowding the narrow path. Everything these people consume must be carried in.
The people are all just sort of friendly, and they just see you go by, and everyone's looking up at the mountains in the sky and saying, wow. And they go, oh, another set of trekkers coming along.
But each new set of trekkers spells trouble for Mingma Norbu, who runs the local conservation group. He knows the visitors are a mixed blessing.
I can see lots of changes, especially there are increasement in number of the local population and number of tourists, and that has impact positive and negative impact as both. So on the positive side, the local people became more wealthier, their lives became more easier. On the other side, I can see some of the environmental problems.
30 years ago, when Mingma Norbu was a child, these valleys were covered in trees. But as each year brings more trekkers, the demand for wood means that the trees are being cut down faster than they can grow. Tsering Nima runs the largest lodge in her village.
What do you like for drink?
Can I have this?
Okay, that's milk tea. So
This room only for cooking. Just only for cooking.
This room is only for cooking.
Very busy.
And then we have a very busy morning, from 5 o'clock until 2 o'clock, all the way through lunch.
Now after 2-3 hours we have a rest, and then again.
Then we have a rest, and then we have cooking starting from 4 o'clock and cook all evening.
Mostly they like pizza.
Mostly they like pizza, English food.
English food.
Tsering Nima has 41 beds in her lodge. In the high season, that means she might need to keep the cooking fires going all day. At those times, she could use up to 15 portaloads of firewood in a week. With their demands for specially cooked meals, hot showers and heated rooms, each foreigner consumes 3 times as much wood as a Sherpa. But firewood is not the only reason trees are being cut down. The building of new tourist lodges also uses the scarce timber.
People have to build and
People have to build everywhere.
build and then they have to chop down all the
Build.
tree.
But they are only chopping, and they never plant.
Trees grow more slowly at this altitude than at sea level. Here it takes twice as long for a pine to mature. With the high rate of cutting, that means it's especially hard for the forests to regenerate. Mingma Norbu believes the solution to the firewood problem is kerosene. He's trying to persuade trekking groups and lodge owners to use kerosene instead of wood. Part of his plan is to set up depots selling subsidized fuel, which is transported up the valley by yak. And Mingma Norbu has other plans to save the forests. From this nursery, he plans to plant 200,000 new trees in the next year. On the second day of her trek, Jane and her group approach the gates of the Sagarmatha National Park. By 1976, visitor numbers were so high that the Nepalese government set up the park to protect the trail up to Everest. Within the park, it is illegal to cut down trees, but the volume of trekking causes other problems. All these people come for the mountain scenery, but it's hardly the isolated wilderness that John Hunt experienced. Jane and her group might pass as many as 100 trekkers a day on the narrow trail. One of Jane's trekking companions, Este Farah, describes the scene.
When we stopped 2 days ago for lunch, the whole area was absolutely packed with tourists, so about 4 or 5 groups, which really surprised me. When you're walking along the path, it just seems like a motorway. There's a constant flow of tourists coming either way.
After a steep climb, Jane and Este arrive at the Sherpa capital, Namche Bazaar. Namche Bazaar has been a trading town for over 400 years. At the Saturday market, Sherpas still meet to buy and sell their wares. But while some of them still trade in the traditional way, the vast majority of them have a new business, tourism.
it seems to be fairly westernised as well. It seems to cater towards the tastes of Westerners. They have lodges everywhere just on the sides of the mountains, and you can come in and hire your down jacket if you're going a bit higher up and you haven't got one. And sort of obviously you have hundreds of stalls everywhere trying to sell you more kits and more souvenirs, and it seems that the main livelihood in the area is not farming or anything, it's selling stuff to Westerners.
Trek cooks no longer buy the food for expeditions here. Too many tourists with too much money have driven up the prices too high.
Because of the increase in the number of tourists coming here, everyone has gone into the tourism industry. They're no longer concentrating so much on agriculture, so less food is grown in the area, and that's why the prices have gone up. The way I see it is, for those government officials and for people who work with tourists, these prices are easy to pay. But for those not involved in the tourist trade, life is hard.
Although Ang Ferber bought all the group's food in Kathmandu, by the time they reach Namche Bazaar, they're ready for a few home comforts.
What was the price like?
Price is going more high up.
Throughout the Khumbu, young Sherpas with money earned from tourists are taking on the ways of Westerners.
When the societies become economically well developed, then people like to wear new fashions and new dresses, and people like to adopt every new thing. But at the same time, we still have a monastery. We still worship and in traditional way. Therefore, we are proud to say that still we have our own culture and society.
While his group have a rest day, Ang Ferber goes to visit friends, a day's walk away from the Everest Trail. Tourists rarely come here. The villagers grow their own food. Potatoes are the main crop, and every household has its own field. Mingma Tsering and his wife Samji are not directly connected to the tourist industry, but their lives are affected by it. They told Ang Ferber that when they do go to Namche Bazaar, the prices are harder than ever to afford. To cope with these new prices, they now rent their yaks out to trekking groups. Ang Ferber, like most Sherpas, is a Buddhist. At Teng Bochi Monastery, he prays for his family and for the success of the trek. At the end of a hard day, the group also reached the monastery, one of the main tourist attractions on the Everest Trail.
3,825 metres, so it's getting colder. And the clouds are coming in earlier, so we'll settle down with about 200 or 300 other people here tonight. So you look at the monastery over here, which is just old and undisturbed, and you look at the massive campsite down here, which is, it's a shame, but that's hypocritical of me to say really, because I'm camping here tonight too.
The byproducts of the goods brought in for Westerners, cans, wrappers and empty bottles, aren't carried out. At this altitude, materials like paper and cloth take years to biodegrade. But of all the litter problems, glass bottles are the worst. Lodges profit by selling beer and soft drinks to trekkers, but nobody will pay to carry the empty bottles out. Mingma Norbu has been fighting the glass bottle problem for several years now. He showed us a pile which he and volunteers had collected, but since collection, the helicopter flights which used to carry them to Kathmandu have been stopped.
We requested the beer companies to solve this problem and the Coca-Cola companies, but they did not take any attention. So we don't know what to do with these bottles. The solution is to ban the bottle from this national park and use environmentally friendly metals such as aluminum can. Cans can be recycled here. The blacksmith used to make a pot.
Many tourists buy bottled drinks because they don't trust the drinking water supply, and it's hardly surprising.
The toilet tents are about maybe about 25, 30 metres away from the river. We're on a sandy-ish soil, and basically anything that's in that is going to go straight into the river. And I think the main problem with that is that the people who live here are probably taking water out from just downstream of our toilet tents. It is a potential problem, especially when people have stomach problems.
In the short term, education is seen as the solution. Trek leaders now know that toilet holes must be dug deeper and further away from the water supply. Whilst human waste remains a problem, Ang Ferber and the other Sherpas are finding ways of dealing with the general litter. At 4,200 metres, while the trekkers leave the camp, he takes litter from near the campsite to the local dump, one of several in the area.
Until tourists came, we didn't have rubbish like this. We didn't understand about rubbish. The kind of stuff we threw away would rot quickly, but up here, plastic and paper never rot. Then we realized that people would stop coming here if it was a mess, and we wouldn't have any business. For us, it makes sense to keep the place clean because tourists come here for the beauty, and that's how we make our living.
After 10 days, Jane and Estee are on the final tough climb to the Everest viewpoint, Kala Patthar, high above the Khumbu Glacier.
We're now at sort of 5,600 metres, so the air is very thin and we had to stop lots. But we got up to the top and the views are just, you can't describe them, it's just fantastic.
It's absolutely spectacular. Every bit of pain that we have endured coming up that mountain has been worth it. It's beyond words, you can't even describe how beautiful it is, it's just amazing.
Next year, even more trekkers will come here using more trees, more water, bringing yet more litter, and of course, money. Ang Ferber will benefit from this trend, but what will it mean for his children?